post in chat, and we'll dispense with those first. Sit back, relax. We'll be starting here in about 3 or 4 minutes. Thanks, everyone. One moment, please. And good day. Now we can get started. Okay, I'm going to make a note of that, Shalini. I have a series of schedule questions, and I cannot remember whether or not one of those is a critical path question, okay? The best critical path material is that exercise that I gave you, but I will see if I can find more. And if not, over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be creating new questions. Yes, it is going rather slowly. And yes, I am one single human being that's doing this, but I will do this. And I'd like them to be practice questions, which means that they take a little more extra time to develop. Okay. Let's see where we are. First of all, it's our last day, isn't it? And we have 2 more lessons. The final lesson takes about it takes about 20 minutes. This lesson's going to take us about 2.5 hours, so we are going to have time. Okay, you'd like the variance of cost contracts? We can look at that. In fact, I have a nice cost exercise too. If we have time today, we'll go through that. If we have time today, I'll look up those critical path questions too, okay? Yeah, we do have time, by the way, if you notice, okay? If everyone does notice, we have time today. I'm going to use up part of that time right now. What I wanted to do was this. Let's go through those practice questions I handed out, okay? Let's look at those. We'll go through about half of them, then we'll start our slides again. Does that sound good? Yeah, let's do it that way. That'll get us going anyway. Let's see, where were we? I copied the questions with answers up to your folder right now. So you should have access to all the answers, but I'm going to give you more than the answers today. We're going to actually break down the questions, so you'll have a record of that. Let's see here. I'm going to put them right here. Yeah, I'll give it to you at the end of class, okay, Amit? Yeah, I'd like us to just pay attention to these questions. When is cost highest in the project life cycle? At initiation, during planning, midway during the project, or during closure? What do you think? This is an easy question just to get us going. You like C? Amruta and Rajesh, yeah. Okay. How about others? You like C? Yeah, it's C. C is correct. Cost follows work. And work is greatest as the team is fully engaged. And that's the middle of the project, right? Here we go. That's the easiest way to remember that. As part of stakeholder management, all the following are acceptable practice to be followed by a project manager, except, right? Okay. What is not acceptable? Okay. We have identify all the stakeholders and capture them. That's good. Ensure stakeholders' expectations are aligned and gain support. That's not bad. Give preference to stakeholders over the customer in case of difference of interest. That's dangerous. And not only that, but isn't a customer a stakeholder? So there's something strange with that. And then communicate to the stakeholders all relevant information. And that's reasonable. So our outlier is C. Okay. Our outlier is C. Can we say that C is not acceptable? One, it's not acceptable because stakeholders and customer should be equal. And two, it's not acceptable because customer is stakeholder. It doesn't even make sense, does it? So yeah, C's the incorrect one for two reasons. Or it's the correct answer. Okay. A project manager is just assigned to a project. They're involved in creating a document that would formally authorize the project and capture initial requirements. What's the output of this process? You like project charter? Okay. Real question. What's the output of the current work described? It's a document. And that document says authorizes the project. And there's only one document that does that. C is correct. Authorizes project and provides PM their authority. That was very strange. Just a second here, guys. That's right. And project charter C is correct. It's not just, it's assigned to a project, but that formally authorizes is the primary indicator. But yeah, they are assigned. But the thing, assignment doesn't necessarily designate authority. That's the only reason I'd want to go with authorizes the project. Okay. Yeah, we don't need both of those. Oh, this is a good one. In a meeting, the sponsor has discussed 3 projects with you. Project A with a net present value of $55,000 and a payback period of 5 years. Project B with an NPV of 95. Project C with a payback period. Okay, let's lay this out. Okay. A, PV, payback. B, present value. Actually, that's net. Net. And then C is payback. Okay. See, this is a strange thing. He provides you with more information and tends to assign you as the PM. Okay. There is a future assignment of you as PM. Okay. What is not expected of you. Okay. A, conduct project selection methods. B, proceed to select the project. D, participate in the project selection method. C, you have no rules. Here's the thing, okay? Generally, the charter is developed and possibly even approved without participation of the PM. However, the PM may have a role, and due to the fact the sponsor already is having you active, the only option that is probably incorrect is you have no role. Okay? See, that's a beautiful thing. You could, as a project manager, do any of the other things. You could conduct project selection methods and proceed to select the project and participate in the project. Now, I want to show you something on this. Let me demonstrate something. Look at this. We don't even use NPV or payback as part of the problem solution. It's extra information that carries no value. Be aware that the exam often does this, okay? You need to capture all the information, but you may not use it. Okay? And the correct answer is C. Okay? One more, and then we'll go to our slides. An important stakeholder in a project is unaware. They do not know what is going on in the project. You know that his support would be very important. Okay. Stakeholder is high power, low interest. Okay. their support could be important. How to move them to supportive? This is a great question, everyone. Send them regular reports. That's nice. But they're not aware. Okay. Assign some work. We'll come back to that. Okay. Send them tickets. That's unethical. Give topmost priority. Is that relevant, given we haven't seen an indication of assessment of all the stakeholders and their issues? Okay. Here's the problem. Yeah, he's important. Yeah, he's not aware. But there are some other things going on in the project. And do we know that those items are more or less important? We don't know that yet. So there's some analysis that we have to consider. And not only that, but if you really want people to engage, you're going to have to get them involved, and they're going to have to get some of their input into that. So we're going to have to be tricky with this. How do I get someone with high power to become engaged when they're currently unaware? You know how? Give them a task. That's right, Rajesh. What type of a task do you think you could give them? Have them review the strategy. Have them look at the objectives and how the project objectives impacts the stakeholder. Yeah, exactly. Have them look at PowerPoint slides and say, hey, I understand that you own this strategy for the company. That's a lot of value. Could I have you review this and give your input? Now, here's the big thing about executives. Executives exist to support initiatives and strategies. That's what their job is, to align the work that's part of their strategy. And if your project is aligned with the corporate strategy in one way or another, your project is going to impact them. And if your project impacts them favorably, they're going to want to talk about that, and they're going to want to highlight that project in their communications. So if you can get them as a reviewer or some type of input into your project, especially when it comes to, the strategic components. Number one, it's a win for them. Number two, it's a win for you. And that's how you do it. And that's why we say C or B is correct. Okay? Okay. Now, I saw one of you say you can't believe the option is C. Okay. And that's one over here, right? Okay. I can justify that, but let's think about it logically instead. Instead of me citing, PMBOK 7 and process group practice guide and all that, let's just think about this logically. For many major projects, think about commercial construction. The PM is involved in these early strategic discussions and decisions. Okay? They are. This may be correct or not. Higher NPV selected is a reasonable option. Okay? C. You may or may not have a role. Saying you have no role is not really accurate. Participate in project selection. You may or may not do this. Again, large projects sometimes require the PM to be part of project selection. Think about a product owner. Sometimes a product owner is their own project manager, and they are very involved in the strategic discussion as well as the tactical actions. Yeah, that's Virendra, that's the other thing I was going to highlight. And thanks for bringing that up. Okay, except this is the problem. We must quickly review all the details of the question and do it in a methodical manner. Okay? It's very easy to miss words like not or except. Okay, this is the tricky part. Now, there's one other thing I want to talk to you about, okay? There's an old strategy called one of these things is not like the other, okay? When you have 4 options and cannot make up your mind, look at the option that is vastly different from the others. It may be the correct one. It may be just a red herring. But it does sometimes indicate that the answer is the one that's vastly different. Okay? Now, you don't want to use this strategy right off, but when you're getting stuck and you need to move on to other questions, this is a good way to actually force the decision. If you're spending more than 1.5 minutes on a question, you're stuck. And there are sometimes times when you just need to put down an answer and move on. Now, here's another thing you can think of, okay? You can also use a select for review or mark for review, which puts the question in a queue to be reviewed at end of exam. Okay, now note, you may not have time. So what you do is you select an option and then mark for review. The option is saved, and if you run out of time, the question is graded as if you had answered it. Okay? How's that for a trick? That's good for 3 or 4 points, everyone, right there. Okay? Okay. That's good enough. And I'll move these questions up onto the folder at the end of class 2. Okay. There's some other things that you'll find on the folder when you go to it next. I have up there my notes from my research on the body of knowledge, my notes on the process group practice guide, and my notes on the Agile practice guide, okay? And it has a lot more there. Nikhil, there's one part and all the questions are random. Your exam is built at the very beginning and they don't break it into topics. Get used to working with random questions, okay? Okay. We're over on slide 21 of section 5. We're going to have fun today. Okay. This is going to be a very, very good class. How do I know? I know what we're going to talk about. This is one of the classes that people always vote as some of the best. So we talked a little bit about supporting team task accountability. I want to respond to this too. And let's close out on this concept. You want your team members to be accountable, right? What's the best way to do it? Well, you have influence and motivation, right? You want them to do the work that they enjoy. You want to have clear communication and expectations of roles and responsibilities. That means using things like Reiki charts. It also means that you need to track progress. Okay. Now, notice that their bullets there say, you know, it's good for the team to participate in the planning, you know, self-organizing teams, determining the determining the work that needs to be done, how to perform the work. It's all of a sudden their work. And just that process sometimes creates that accountability that you're looking for. Who should perform it? If they have some general guidelines, like whoever is the strongest in that work should do the work primarily, that's not a bad guideline to teach people. And we're not just talking about adaptive work here. We're also talking about traditional projects. And this is where we talk about the Reiki chart. Have I introduced a Reiki chart to you yet? I don't remember. Okay, so we don't have to talk about responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. Yeah, and remember our discussion in leadership. This is one of the ways that you get people engaged. Get their name associated with the tasks and get it public, get it transparent. Curate knowledge as an asset. Okay, what do I mean by curate? You're a librarian of knowledge if you're a project manager, okay? Just like a PMO is a librarian of project knowledge for the organization, you're the librarian of knowledge for the project, okay? Now, we're talking about two things here. We're talking about explicit and tacit knowledge. We need to really be clear about what that means. Explicit knowledge, knowledge that can be codified using symbols such as words, numbers, and pictures. Let's talk about explicit knowledge. And I'm just going to add on to what we said here, okay? I can write it down. I can share with someone, right? Pick up the box in the corner, carry it to the other side of the room, stack it with the other boxes. That's what we mean by explicit. Okay. Now, when we talk about tacit, it's hard to share, it's hard to document, and it's hard to teach. Okay. Personal knowledge. There's a lot of things that come under the category of personal knowledge. One, it's something I've turned into a habit. We forget habits, right? You know, you don't think about typing anymore. You just think words. You don't think about moving your fingers. When you first started typing, you thought about moving your fingers. But now, when you type, you think in words and sentences and paragraphs, right? Not only that, but you don't think about how you keep your hands curled so you don't get them stiff and you hurt them, right? You don't think about keeping your wrists flat, right? Keeping your wrists flat like that. It's an ergonomic principle. If you do that, you won't have wrist injuries after you've been typing for 40 years. I've been typing since I was 16, right? That's what, 45 years of typing. And I'm still just as limber as I was back then in my hands. But you know what? They're habits. I could not tell you how to type and not get injured because I was taught it 45 years ago. We call that tacit knowledge. A lot of other things come under tacit knowledge. Number one, it's always been done that way. part of the culture, right? Part of the culture is you wash your hands when you get in from work or school, right? You do, you just do. And it's just, we've always done it that way. Now, we know the reason why we do it. But the thing is, sometimes it's lost to history. The only reason we know we do it, because why? Because we just went through COVID. And we turned that tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge, right? All of a sudden, what did you have? A bunch of advertisements on television and government websites were saying, this is the way we wash our hands, right? We sing a little song to ourselves, so we wash our hands with soap enough. And we're turning these tacit activities that we do, these habits, into real work, into real explicit tasks. Okay. Now, here's the problem. Tacit knowledge is the good stuff. Tacit knowledge has the wisdom of the group. Tacit knowledge are all these things that all the experts forgot about. And so as a project manager, one of the best things you can do is look out for tacit knowledge and have your experts and other people doing the work help you build explicit descriptions of that. You do make time for this on your project, okay? Because if you make time for this in your project, then on future projects, you'll save time. You know, it's and this time savings are geometric in proportion. Let's see here. Oh, well, let's talk about communities of practice and work shadowing. Okay. We also have knowledge management, connecting people to create new knowledge. Let me see where I can find that. I know I have a write-up in the process group practice guide for this. I think it's over near page 137. We'll take a look. Oh, come on. There we go. Let's see, just a second here. There's only one other place it can be. Okay, we won't look at it. It's here somewhere, and I don't want to pursue it any further. And here I am pursuing it, right? One more opportunity here. Okay, we won't pursue it. It's enough to have this, and this is over on page 139, and we'll copy that for you. Connecting people to create new knowledge, right? Allowing people to share ideas. This creates lessons learned. Okay. And again, going back to the slide, this is where we have communities of practice and work shadowing. We have training, we have meetings or seminars. You really do need to allow people to meet and talk, because this is where ideas get from. You know, it can't be just all getting the work done and that's all we're focused on. There's also information management, connecting people to people or people to knowledge to create new knowledge. You need people to have access to books, to have journals, to white papers, to Wikipedia. You know, again, we're still evaluating tools like AI right now because we don't trust AI yet. And AI may not be mature enough for us to use it as a valid, trusted tool. But these are the things that actually allow us to get knowledge. It's not just connecting people to people, it's connecting people to books and ideas and articles that are valid and you know they deserve citation and remembering. Certainly, Ashish. At the end of class, I'll give that to you, okay? Now, let's talk about motivation. The last word on motivation. Motivation must not disrupt work. It exists to protect work from other disruptions. You can't stop work to just motivate people. That doesn't make sense, right? That defeats the purpose. Okay. And actually, that's what this slide says. Don't overwhelm people with meetings and work interruptions. Don't distract with non-project work, and don't force group activities. Okay, this is the other thing. Don't force motivation. It's like forcing a tree to drink water. All it does is remove dirt from the roots and makes the tree susceptible to hurt, right? That's the problem. You have to have just enough motivation and not too much, which is hard. How do I figure out how to do that? It's called optimal. Okay. There's a magical word called optimal. Okay. Where the benefits of motivation equal the costs in time as well as money of motivation. And when motivation costs more than its benefits, it's not worthy. And that's what you need to start thinking of. This is a good rule. How much quality should I put into my project? Optimal, right? To the point where the benefits of quality equal the costs. How much risk planning? Optimal. How much investment in lessons learned? Optimal, right? We have to remember this project exists for primary objectives, and all these things are supplementary to make the project more successful. But if these things become more important than the project, it's like a tail telling the dog the direction to go. It doesn't make sense. How do we do this? We provide opportunities. We have to make motivation the choice of the individual. We can't direct people. We have to influence them. Okay, what do I mean by that? Influence and motivation are giving people a good reason to do the work. And one of the best reasons is to demonstrate the work fulfills their personal needs. Okay? Let's just take Maslow, for example. The work will give them a paycheck, keep them employed, allow them to be around people like them. That's fulfillment of social needs. Gain them personal respect and respect of others, and may even fulfill a part of what they think of as their purpose. Now, these things are really selfish, right? And they're selfish in a good way, not selfish in a bad way. And we can use these things to motivate and influence. These are actionable steps. I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about things that you can demonstrate to others and yourself. That influence and motivation are real, they're tactical, and you can demonstrate their success. And that's just Maslow. Okay? Training, right? We talked about that. That improves engagement, right? Virtual teams, check in with them on a regular basis. Self-assessment, right? Do pre-test, post-tests. Even during the project, it might not be a bad thing to do. Use Tuckman's ladder. Assess, right? Assess, where are they in the growth of the team, right? Are they forming? Are they storming, norming, performing? What do they need, right? Now, the beauty of Tuckman's actually says we're doing this as a group, and we respect and we observe that it's the group doing the work. And this is a powerful, powerful statement. And we don't really know what that means until we've been part of a true quote unquote group. Give them a sense of what collaboration is and does. Give them a sense of what consensus means. And then all of a sudden, delegate consensus. and get them to drive that. It's really funny. You get a few people who are really interested in these concepts, and you let them loose, and all of a sudden these concepts become driving forces on the project. Document management, artifacts, right? The reason why we have documents in a project are to, number one, organize and save project information. Number two, have the correct version. And this is one of the ways that you're going to actually make sure that people have what they need when they need it, right? The minimizing of disruptions type of work. This does not have to take a lot of time. This can be automated tools like SharePoint, or it could be simple tools like Google or Dropbox. But in one way or another, I have yet to know a project manager who does not organize their documents in a meaningful manner. And I'm not just talking about meaningful for the project manager, I'm talking about meaningful for the team and the success of the project. And we're done. Now we can move. We get to evaluate project progress. I wonder what's part of this. I bet we're going to get into some interesting topics here. Only measure what matters. And if it matters, you are going to measure it. Systems thinking, right? Managing your project as a group of functions and processes. That's what a system is. Looking at things in a way that you can say, well, we got this done. This is where we are. This is where we think we're going to be tomorrow. How can I validate that? Well, in a traditional project, we're going to look at a plan and compare that. In adaptive projects, we're going to say, you know, we're doing better than we did yesterday. I wonder if we can do even better tomorrow, and how can we prepare for that? And this isn't just budget and schedule. We're not just talking about our value here. We're talking about scope, right? Percentage of work completed. This is what Gantt charts help us with. Quality, right? What are the number of defects against the number of allowable defects? Are we following process and procedure in a meaningful way? Risk. Are we managing risk? Is there evidence that we're truly managing risk, not just giving it lip service, right? All these things are measurable and quantifiable. There's a lot of tools we talked about that can actually help us. And this is just a small piece. We've talked about variance and trend analysis. We've talked about work performance reports and dashboards and milestone schedules. And we've even talked and inferred a little bit about quality reports, and we may look at those a little bit more also. It's easy to monitor scope, right? There's a little known fact. I said the scope doesn't belong on the schedule, right? But you can actually place work packages and phases on the schedule, can't you? You just have them as groupings of activities, right? And if you do that, and if you finish all the work of the activities, you can actually show progress of completion of the scope. Isn't that beautiful? And that's what we're looking at. Can we use components like the work breakdown structure, the work packages, and actually say we're complete up to this point? And that's what our Gantt charts, again, help us with. And that's not just the scope baseline traditional projects. We're also looking at our backlogs, right? Our backlogs and our releases are that work and deliverable too. We can do the same thing there. Scope validation. Okay, there's two control processes that we actually use to monitor scope. It's way down here. Nope. It's validate scope and control scope, okay? Let me spend about 5 minutes and talk about this. If our project is let's bake cookies, validate scope says, are the cookies done? Okay. Did we complete the work? That's what validate scope looks at. It says, did we get that piece of work done? The end. Okay. Control scope says, do we need to change the timer, the temperature, or even the recipe? Okay. Yeah, control scope is part of change management. Validate scope is part of acceptance, and it's a part of definition of done. Okay. That's pretty easy, isn't it? So when I say validate scope, I say, what are the acceptance criteria? What are the requirements? Did we meet each requirement? And this is what user acceptance testing helps us with. It's not just us saying that this deliverable is accepted. It's the people who are responsible for that deliverable after the project ends who must actually participate in that. And then there's also definition of ready and definition of done too. Gantt charts are the tools we're going to be using in our scope work. Okay, quality metrics are the tools we're going to be using in quality control, which is our defect analysis, and quality assurance, which is our compliance. Now, we're going to start looking at some schedule management tools. And many of these schedule management tools also help us in budget management as well. We're going to have some type of report. If you remember, we turned our data to information, and then we turn our information reports, and it's our reports we use to control the project, right? And that's why we have things like Gantt charts and schedules and baselines. Here's some other things we can do with charts. We can use them to communicate. We can have a burn down chart. Okay, burn down, what does that mean? Burn down means what is the remaining work, right? We're looking at that over time. We could actually plot our topics in this way too, couldn't we? It's not a bad way of looking at work. And then we have burn up. How much work is complete? How much work has we moved into production? That's the other side. And as your burn down goes slow, goes low, that's the remaining work. The burn up, which is the work released, is going up. And oftentimes it's very interesting to look at those two numbers going in different directions. And of course, our task boards are valuable, okay? Our task boards are looking at the rate at which our items, work items, features, epics, or even we can just call them tasks, right? How fast are they entering the task board? How fast are they leaving? Am I finishing a task per day, a task every 2 days? Are things slowing down? Are things speeding up, right? That's velocity. And we can actually use task boards in some Agile projects to help us with that. Velocity, what's velocity? Rate over time, right? How many work packages per week? That's velocity. How many features per week? That's velocity. And we can be tracking that as well. I was tracking that. In October, I started developing 6 classes for a university, and we were looking at different classes. And then within the classes, each one had multiple lessons. And so we traced our velocity at the lesson level. And then we have throughput. Okay, what do we mean by throughput? If velocity is rate of work across time, throughput is amount of work at a stage. Okay, think about a garden hose. Okay, velocity is the speed of the water through the hose. And throughput is the diameter of that hose. How much water can you move at a certain single point, right? Two different concepts. They measure different things, but oftentimes they're very complementary. Now, we've talked about budget challenges before because budget is one of those items inside a company that are controlled very carefully. We need to have a really good way of documenting and ensuring that we're managing the budget in a reasonable manner, right? Things that could get off track on our budget. Requirements, right? New or change requirements. Again, if you're talking about new or change requirements, you're going to talk about new or change scope, which is going to impact the duration and resources and the deliverable. Let's talk about earned value management. Earned value management is a set of math. It's not just the formulas. It's a way of looking at the data in order to get more knowledge about the progress of the project. Okay. Let me make a few statements. Remember, there will be 10 to 11 math problems on the exam. It'll be simple logic, algebra, and you know how to do that. Most of it you'll be able to do in your head, but you're going to have electronic whiteboard and a calculator, a 6-function calculator, simple one to help you. The exam doesn't ask you to recite formulas. Okay. It does ask, what does this mean? You know, you're going over budget and you're going behind schedule. What does that mean? That could be a reasonable question that they're asking you. It also asks, what do you do next, first, last? What should you not do? Okay. Okay. So you're not going to have to memorize a bunch of formulas, but I am going to give you some concepts, and the concepts are going to help you. Let's look at these formulas. Okay. Now, if you do by chance memorize them, great, because they're going to be really handy on the project. You're going to realize that you can do this almost easier. On simple projects, you can do it almost easier in Excel than you can setting up a Microsoft project file or setting something up in Sciforma. Now, when it comes to bigger, more complicated projects, that's where these tools really help you. The tools follow these rules that we're going to be talking about. First of all, it's a graphical representation of information. Okay. Let's set the stage. First of all, we're talking about a phase-based schedule, okay? That's the first thing. Second of all, we're tracing budget and schedule. You start off with something simple. You start off with a time scale. You add a work scale. And it looks something like that, right? Well, guess what? If that's the work, the cost is going to look like that too, right? Roughly. Now, this is not reality yet. This is planning, okay? So when we have a line like that, we call it a planned value. Let's look and see what planned value means. Authorized budget assigned to the schedule work. So it's the money set aside to complete the work at any point in the project. And this is the line. Okay. Now that planned value might be here, or here, or here, or here. It's cumulative, right? Or here. Now notice here, we're going into the future. At that point, it's a forecast. Okay. Here, 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 and then here. The planned value at the end of the project is the budget or the cost baseline. It's the planned value for the entire project, okay? That's planned value. Okay. Let's look at our next value. We're going to do actual cost. If that's our planned value and that's our actual cost, we probably spent more money than we planned to, right? So what it looks like. Hold that thought. We have another actual we want to look at. We have one plan and we have two actuals. Cost and schedule. Okay. Money and time, right? Our first one is actual cost. Are we spending money reasonably for the amount of work we're getting done? How about schedule? But we're not going to call it schedule. We're going to call it effort. The other item besides cost is work. Earned value, not planned value, but earned value. If planned value is the total work planned, actual cost actual money spent, and earned value, which is actual work. Now, what can we do with these values? Here's some of the things we can do. We can say, okay, let's compare planned value to earned value, right? Here, here, here. It looks like our earned value is well under the planned value. And then we have earned value to actual cost. Okay. So what we're doing is we're comparing those two values. I think it's time for us to look at the formulas. 1 second, please. One moment, please. I left something out. EV, EV, and AC are generally currency values. Why? And what does this mean? It's easy to actually track this, right? First of all, we can say that if an activity costs $6,000, that is its planned value. And if we completed 50% of that value, we can say we completed $3,000 or 50% times 6,000. Okay. Isn't that beautiful? And this is what Gantt charts help you with. You track the completion of work as a percentage. And then the Gantt chart says, well, this activities, again, $6,000. So if you completed half of that work, you completed $3,000 of work. Okay. That's the way you come up with EV. An actual cost is simple, right? That's just the realized cost. And then our planned value is the value of the work as planned. So you have these three variables that you're going to be working with. Our first formula is going to be a status formula. Or we're saying earned value minus planned value. Or remaining versus planned. I wish. No, that works. That works. This is why this works. Okay. This is why all this works. First of all, when earned value is bigger than planned value, if this number is positive, you're going to be happy. Okay. If earned value is less than planned value, that's where you're going to get sad. Okay, Andy? Okay. You can do the same thing with cost position. And now we're going to compare earned value to actual cost. The value of the remaining work put up against the value of money spent. What does it look like to get all this work done and spend this much money? Once again, if earned value is greater than actual cost, we're happy. And if earned value is less than actual cost, we're going to be sad. Okay, let's put some numbers in this. How do we define project schedule measurement frequency? Or as it depends on the project duration? It depends on many factors, probably up to 15 factors. Okay, how is the work commonly measured in units? What's the organization's preference? Does the business require us to do it a certain way? Are there OPAs that help us do it in a meaningful manner? Now, let's stop right here. I want to show you how this works. Okay. Let's see that the project baseline is $40,000. Okay. We call that budget at complete. Okay, that's our cost baseline. That's the planned value for the entire project. Now let's say we are stopping mid-phase and collect this information. Organizational process assets, knowledge bases, and previous lessons learned. And here's what we learned. Plan value is $30,000. So we expected when we reached this part of our project to have spent $30,000 or finished $30,000 of work. Okay. And let's say we completed $28,000 of work. And the money we spent was that much. Okay. Right. What we planned, work completed, and budget spent. Okay. So let's use a couple formulas. Schedule variance is equal to earned value minus planned value. We are behind schedule. You can also say cost variance. Let's see here. What's earned value and actual cost? $28 to $32. There we go. We're behind schedule and we overspent by $2,000. Not good. Let's actually look at derivatives of these formulas, okay, and see what they can teach us. You can take the variables in their positions and leave them there, and then you can change subtractor to a divisor, okay? Let's just do this formula. It's called Schedule Performance Index, and then we'll talk about what it means. We overspent by, oh, I'm sorry. We're overspent by $4,000. You're right. Thank you for that. One moment, please. I would not recommend teaching math late on a Friday evening. It takes practice and it takes humility. Okay. So we're talking about what? 28 divided by 30. $93. We are progressing at 93% of planned rate. That's our miles per hour or kilometers per hour, right? That's where we get our velocity. Does everybody see that? We're below 100%, so we're not going as fast as we should. Everybody comfortable? Not with the formula. Are we comfortable with the concept? Okay. Now let's look at our other index. This is where things start getting really fun. CPI. We still take our variables, EV and AC, but now once again, we replace the subtractor with the divisor. And what does this mean? This is an important formula. This is the size of completed work divided by the size of budget spent, right? What's the ratio of completed work to your budget? That's interesting. .875. We are spending 0.88, or we're receiving 0.88 effort for every dollars spent. Okay. This is miles per gallon or kilometers per liter. This is our fuel or budget efficiency. Okay. How well are we spending money? That's what CPI is. Are we effective? Are we getting more work out of our money, or are we getting less work out of our money? This is an important question. Okay, any questions? Now, that's just status. Let's start looking at forecasting. That means we're looking into the future. That means we're looking at that part of the project. Actually, we need to clarify that statement. Okay. That's only half of what we say. Okay. How's that? Does that clarify it a little bit more, Shalini? Okay. Forecasting. You want it to be 100% effort. You want work and budget to run out at the same time. That's proper project management, and it will never happen. We're going to call that value budget at complete. Okay. It's the planned value for the entire project. But look at that. We have two alternatives that could happen in the future. We don't know which one it is. Which one do I choose? I don't know yet. But I do know that we call that value EAC. Now, there's another value we need to look at. Okay. It's this value. Right there. That's what we call variance complete, or VAC, the difference between those two variables. Okay. Now, there's a bunch of different ways we can get our estimate at complete. I'm going to show you only one way. It's an interesting formula, and I'll tell you what it means here in a second. VAC divided by CPI. Okay. How to control actual costs not to go beyond PV. There's a lot of ways we can do it. Let's not worry about how to do it right now. Let's talk about how do we find out that that's a problem we need to solve. Based on current activities, we can expect this as a revised budget. 40K. Let's see, what is CPI? 88, right? Okay. You know which way the number is going to go, right? It's going to go higher. Let's see what that looks like. $45,454. There's a couple more things we can do with this. I don't want to go too much further with this, but let's look at ETC. This is how much more money do I need to spend to finish the project? Okay. Let's finish this discussion though. What does this say? What does that even mean? We have a new revised estimate. Okay. See where we're going with this? Which means we have a total project variance or variance at complete of looks like 5454, right? Or 45,454. Let's take a break. And then when we get back from break, we'll close out on earned value. There's one more item I want to look at, one more formula. And then we'll start looking at our resources and our compliance. Let's see here. Let's see. I got a couple of the things I want to do. There's the poll. Let's put the timer up. We'll talk to you in about 10 minutes, okay? Okay, thanks everyone. Just one moment, please. Ah, we're back. And I'm refreshed. So let's look at this. What can we do with these? Well, we can say we're behind or ahead of schedule. We can say we're over or under budget. We can say this is the rate at which we're spending money, or the rate at which we're getting the work done. And this is the rate at which we're spending money. And we could be getting work done at a slower or greater rate, or spending money at a greater or slower rate too. These ratios are critical, because if you stay at a certain ratio over time, it's going to be harder and harder to move the dial. Like us, if we continually get behind with our slides, it's going to get harder and harder for us to catch up over time, right? Let me give you one more example what you can do with this. This is not going to be on the exam by any means, but I want you to really think about what you can really do with these numbers, okay? And there are many resources you can use to find these numbers. Let's review TCPI, to complete performance index. Okay. What is TCPI? TCPI equals size of remaining budget divided by size of remaining time. Now, it usually is in currency value, but if you go into the Earned Value Practice Guide, they show you how to turn that currency value back into a effort value. And that's what we're looking at here. This is an effort value. And it says this is how much effort that we're going to get rid of. Okay. See that? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, what does that mean? It means if I am going home from a travel in my car, do I have enough gasoline to make it to my garage? That's what it means, right? Do I have enough budget to complete my work? That's what it means. TCPI equals 1 means I will run out of gas at exactly the same time I pull into the garage. That is a beautiful formula, isn't it? These formulas actually are built into Microsoft Project and Primavera and Siteform, and this is one of the reasons why they use these powerful tools. But you can do these formulas in Excel too, can't you? Yeah, exactly. It's not that difficult. And if you do it like for 4 or 5 projects, it becomes easy. And then if you do it for 10 or 20, it becomes natural. Do you have any other questions on earned value? I gave you just enough information to pass the exam. Don't have to worry about memorizing formulas. Understand these as a concept. Remember these things like miles per hour or kilometers per hour or kilometers per liter. Remember your velocity and your budget or your cost efficiency. These are the things that are going to help you answer the questions. Now, one last thing. Let's say we're over budget and under schedule or behind schedule. We're over budget and we're ahead of schedule. We're under budget and behind schedule. And we're under budget and ahead of schedule. In this one, we're excited and happy. Okay. This one, we're frustrated and anxious. Okay. Over budget may be a result of ahead of schedule. Okay. And this is behind schedule. May be due to not spending enough money. Okay. There are ways to interpret these things that actually help you. And this is one of the things that the exam's going to challenge you on. Okay. They're going to give you context and they're going to say, okay, here's your position from budget and schedule. Now, what do you do? Or what does this mean? Now, you can see how all this relates to your resource management, right? If I'm behind schedule, I want to look at my team. I want to look at their performance. Are they healthy? Is the team at a mature level? Are they working as a team? And then the individuals in the team. Are each one of the individuals engaged and are they all, contributing to the work? These are the things we want to look, not just at the group level, but the individual level. We're going to be doing some root cause analysis here. Okay. Same thing with physical resources, right? Our equipment and tools and supplies. These are the things that we're going to be monitoring and tracking. I would often have a 15-foot trailer that we needed to rent to move things like cranes and move things like, 2 tons of construction material to a work site. And to have that delay by a day, it may be nice to delay the spending of the money, but it's not nice to delay the work. And these things are critical. It's sort of like the nursery rhyme that says, because of a nail, a shoe was lost, and because a shoe, a horse was lost, and because a horse, a rider was lost, and because of all this, the war was lost, all for the price of a nail. And this is what you're looking for. What are the primary causes? What can we actually get out of the way? And hopefully you're not just looking in the rearview mirror. This is not just a past event. You're trying to predict what can be happening coming up. And this may change, right? Remember your schedule up, your resource optimization, and all those things. Those still come into play. You don't just use it to, to adjust your schedule before the work starts. This is something that you're going to be doing on a regular basis, right? You're going to be compressing your schedule here. You're going to move your resources over here. You're going to be overlapping. This is a regular assessment. You're looking at contracts. You're auditing the contract, and you're reviewing the performance of your sellers. Quality. What are you doing in quality? Well, primarily what we're doing is quality assurance and continuous improvement. Okay. First of all, quality assurance is saying, are we following process? You're right. You're looking for defects, your quality control. But you're also saying, let's look at the data and make sure we're following the processes in an appropriate manner. Now, what do I mean by appropriate manner? It's our quality metrics. Remember our quality metrics? Audit, a form of inspection that helps us in compliance. And we have that in quality, risk, and contracts. You'll see the term audit associated with those three topics. You're going to be looking at quality metrics here, which means 16.3 centimeters plus or minus 1 centimeter. Quality control says, is it within that tolerance, right? Do we have a defect? Quality assurance says, how predictable over time is the data? So if you look at something like this, this item out here is going to be outside the tolerance. That's a defect. Now, if we have something like this, number one, we have a defect. But number two, is that real predictable data? Right? And that's the big question. See, we have something that's way up here and way down here, and all of a sudden we have something like this. We have something that's way up here and way down here, and we have something like this. If I wanted to see something more predictable, Shouldn't it look something like this? That's where the QA comes in. Okay. Are you starting to get the picture? Are we following process and procedure? Is there something causing that process to not behave in a natural manner? Okay. Data gathering, checklists, check sheets, questionnaires, and surveys, just like we do in other data gathering activities. But we also have something called statistical sampling. Okay, collection of data. You may not have to do this, but you have to ensure that the people who are collecting data understand this. Are we collecting enough data? When you study statistics, you have to look for a reasonable amount of data to actually make a statement. It doesn't have to be all the data, but it has to be enough. And in statistics, they teach you how to estimate how much data is enough data. Okay. Are we collecting the right data, right? Is the data to be used for, is this a defect? Are we following process? And we're going to have to collect data in a way that actually helps us answer those type of questions. Here, we have attribute data. And here we have variable data. Okay. And there's a whole bunch of study behind this. Don't worry about these terms. Understand the concept. Okay. Data sampling is almost important as the appropriate type of analysis when you're looking at quality. Now, where does this lead us? Leads us to data visualization. We're going to go through this real quickly. Okay. First of all, there's going to be about 4 to 7 different quality reports that it'll bring up on the exam. Okay. Some of these reports are like histograms. What's a histogram? Historical diagram. A historical diagram is just a vertical bar chart, right? So we could actually call this a type of histogram, right? And what does it represent? It represents categories of data based on frequency, so you can compare them. And then we have Pareto charts. Let's talk about a Pareto chart. We may have one coming up here real quickly. Yeah, we'll have one coming up here. We'll talk about Pareto charts. So let's just go into our cause and effect diagram. There's 2 things you want to think about: cause effect or fishbone or Ishikawa diagrams. First of all, they're good for brainstorming. Second of all, they're good for root cause analysis, right? Okay, let's suppose that we're in a group and we're trying to find out what's causing the problem. This is the problem, and that's the head of the fish. Okay, product quality not matching requirements. Great. Okay, well, the problem is not great, but it's great that we've identified it. Because now what we can say is, okay, why is that happening? What could be the causal factor? We start off by brainstorming categories, not the actual root cause, but categories first. What areas of our operation or manufacturing are causing quality to not match requirements? And we could say things like, well, what about equipment? What about process? What about people, material, environment, or management? Who's giving us these ideas? Team members and experts, right? They're the ones who have this knowledge, and hopefully they're the people we're pulling into these brainstorming activities. Now, let's say that we've come to a point where we think we have enough categories, okay? We've run out of ideas, or we're confident that we have the categories captured. Then we switch gears. And that's where the facilitator or leader, that might be the project manager or team lead, says, you know what? Let's get a closer look at equipment. What within equipment could cause this? What within process could cause this, or people, or material, or environment, or management? We're actually looking at the next level of detail. And we may do this even beyond this. We may go, okay, what's a causal factor of low maintenance? Why would we be still having old technology, right? We're looking at the root cause. And the team and the experts who are participating in this are the ones who are going to say, okay, I think it's really this. And when you have that confidence showing up and you're starting to gain consensus, this is where you know we're probably getting really close to that root cause. And then the fishbone exercise is done. Use the results of the fishbone and you do your analysis, which means you create a small team to do some discovery and find out if that's truly a fact and if you can truly link the cause to the effect. Nice little tool. Very common tool, very easy tool to implement. And then we have scatter diagrams. Scatter diagrams are great. The thing you want to remember about scatter diagrams is, number one, two variables, and number two, correlation. Okay, remember the word correlation. So let's pretend that the x-axis is time and the y-axis is temperature. And let's say this is 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., okay? What are we able to say about this data? First of all, we have a pretty strong pattern here, don't we? It looks, as the data goes to the right, the data also goes down, and it looks like it's a pretty regular occurrence. Now, here's the thing. Can we say that time is making temperature drop, or temperature is making time progress? No. That would be causation. And that's not what we're observing here. What we see is correlation. There is yet another cause that is influencing and tying these both together. Okay. And we know what that is, right? It's the rotation of the Earth and the rotation of the Earth around the sun and the angle of the Earth and all those things together that are causing this pattern between time and that. But it's not time itself. It's not causation, it's correlation. Two variables, correlation. Control charts. We have specifications and control limits. What's the difference between the two? Specification limits. These define boundaries or defects. Control limits. These define boundaries or control. Okay. And like I said, look at here. We have a defect. And that's the only defect. 1 out of 9. Is that important? Is that meaningful? Well, I don't know. We're going to have to talk to our experts and say if 1 out of 9 defects is allowable or reasonable, or is it a problem? But then look here. This is not a defect, but it's outside of control. This is a defect, and it's outside of control too. It would be nicer if it stayed within those boundaries, right? How about this one? Is that a problem? Do you think that's a problem? Okay. What if this was flipping a coin? Okay, what if this was a control chart for flipping a coin? And this were heads, and this were tails. Would that be a problem? Have you ever flipped a coin 7 times in a row and seen 7 heads? Or 7 tails in a row? No. There's something causing that, right? Hopefully, that we can find the problem with this. See, that's a beautiful thing. We're not just talking about finding defects. This is not just quality control. This is also quality assurance. This is saying, is there something causing this to have this unnatural behavior? That's the beauty of control charts. There's a whole study and a whole science behind documenting, using, and gaining knowledge from these control charts. And it goes back to the late 1800s to an office memo that Herbert Shewart sent out in the early 1920s. And he said, I have a new way of looking at this data. I've got this data on telephone lines and the signals that are passed on telephone lines. And I've run this data through and I'm starting to see some patterns. And it's helping me find where the problems are. Control charts go back that far. That was the dawn of the quality age. Let's talk about a Pareto chart. A Pareto chart is a type of histogram, except it's a different type of histogram. It takes a histogram and then it organizes the histogram by frequency descending. Why? Because we want to focus on those guys right there. We want to put all of our efforts on those. That category is called the critical few, right? The critical few are the items that cause the most issues. The critical few are the ones that have the most influence. Like in Wilfredo Pareto's time, the critical few were the top 20% who owned most of the money in Europe. Okay. And here's the application. This was another Peter Drucker discovery. He said, if you focus most of your attention on the critical few, which means the leftmost column, number one, you're going to be focusing all your efforts on solving one problem, which is going to be better. And number two, you're going to eliminate more defects. So you're getting a double hit of efficiency when you use Pareto charts and use them to direct the way you have decisions. Now, let me actually highlight something, okay? I recommend you use Pareto analysis on your preparation for the exam. Trace the number of questions you are getting wrong. Associate them with various categories and determine the critical few. Focus your efforts there for improvement. It will be more effective and much more influential on your progress. Isn't that beautiful? Why don't we use the things we're learning in project management to improve not just our projects, but our performance on that? One of my students taught me that back in 2009. Yeah, she thought she'd found something really neat, and she had. I didn't realize how neat it was. Because number one, it's a great idea. Number two, it gets you really, really upfront experience on the value of Pareto and Pareto analysis. Okay. Pretty cool. Okay, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this slide, but I want to say one thing, okay? There are two steps in preparing the deliverable for handoff. Okay. 1, did we complete all the work? Scope completeness. 2, did we do the work correctly? Quality correctness. Okay. And here's how we're going to do it. Validate scope, completeness, quality control, correctness. So here's how we're going to do it. Okay. We create the deliverable or a piece, and it goes into quality control. Now, it's either going to be marked a defect and we're going to have to fix it, or it's going to mark verified deliverable. Verified is an action of analysis that determines correctness. Okay. And then that verified deliverable is going to be handed off to validate scope. And that's going to create an accepted deliverable or not. And validate is an action of analysis that determines completeness. And then you can go to close project or phase. Okay. So number 1, we determine correctness. And then number 2, we determine completeness. And you can take that into the exam. That's a good rule of thumb. We're also doing two things in risk management at this point. Number 1, we're looking for risks that are occurring or changing because the probability and or impact may go up or down over time, or the risks may become issues. Okay. Second of all, we may want to improve the way we're managing risk. Those 2 activities are both part of risk control. Monitoring risk, right? Are the project assumptions still valid? Are they still assumptions? Can we replace the assumptions with estimates, right? Because an assumption still introduces risk. And as I stated, we also continuously improve risk effectiveness. Reserve analysis is part of control risk. What do I mean? It's looking at the risk that has not yet occurred, but is still still one you want to trace or track, and comparing that against the reserve that's remaining, right? And how do we do this? We use our risk register. There's a few documents that you're going to modify every time you open them. I'm not just talking about the schedule and the budget and the scope. Risk register, stakeholder register, issue log. We can add assumptions log to that too. There are a series of documents that you say every time I open them, I should expect to make a change. One of the terms that I haven't talked about for a while is compliance. Quality assurance and compliance are often mutually they're the same, they're synonymous, and we have to look at this on a regular basis, right? Compliance is not just quality assurance. Compliance is the governance that actually works with quality assurance. It's compliance says, yes, I have enough authority and I am the entity or individual that says this is following process, like safety procedures, like operational steps. You got to do this, then this, then this, right? These are things that we do. We go in, and if we're the person performing these quality audits, we look at checklists, and we look at records. You know, what sequence were these activities done? Were they completed? And then we trace business value. I've spoken enough to this, but I would like to continue discussing this too. We don't just use value to gain project approval, right? We have a business management plan that says, here is the value we're creating, and here are the steps in the plan that are building that value. And here's the monitoring, controlling of that value, how we're going to test and inspect it. And we're going to verify and validate that that value is real. It's not just an Excel spreadsheet. And then we can actually go back into our validation of scope and say we're handing off value at the end of a project. What do I mean by that? It means that I'm going to have a project that could probably say, you know, this project is going to save us about $1.5 to $2 million in electricity costs year over year for the next 4 years. Well, that's great. Okay, so show me in your plan how that actually impacts that. What are your requirements that are going to capture that and validate that? What are the tests that you're going to do that demonstrate that cost savings? And how do you actually take the results of that test and confirm and actually influence me to understand that this is what's really going to happen. It's not just happening in the pilot. These are the things that actually are going to be impacting your focus on the project. This doesn't happen on my projects, Tim. Well, happened on mine. It started happening back in 2006. I had one CIO say, okay, Tim, it's a great spreadsheet. Show me your pilot. Show me the data you're going to collect and show me how you're going to validate that for me. And then all of a sudden I had 2 more the next year and I had 6 more the next year. Be prepared. Use your business analysts to actually work with your experts and get everybody a room and brainstorm. How are we going to take these benefits and quantify them and demonstrate them in such a way that the people understand that they're getting value, not just a deliverable. They're getting savings in electricity for the next 4 years. They're not just getting a device. Issues. Yeah, we're coming up to the second hour, but again, this is going to be about 20 minutes, half hour. So we're in a good position still, everyone, and we may be able to do some more practice questions, but I do have some closing comments, and I know that you might have some last questions, or you want to talk about, what do we do now that this class is over? And we can review that. Issue. What's an issue? First of all, a risk might happen, and if it does, will impact. An issue has occurred or is occurring and might impact. Notice the difference between the two. Once a risk occurs, it is now an issue. Okay, so we have impediments, obstacles, and blockers. Now, the material says impediment and blocker are synonyms, okay? And that's fine. And it says they're both a type of obstacle. Let's actually clarify this a little bit. And I'm going to show you another way to use these, okay? Let's say an obstacle is something I can go around, over, under, through, okay? An impediment slows down work. A blocker stops work, okay? Isn't that clever? What could I do with that? I could prioritize my issues, right? Just like I prioritize my risks, right? Red, yellow, green. This makes me very effective in focusing my attention on the more important issues. issue, a condition or situation that may have an impact on the project. May have an impact. Okay. Here's one of the major concepts that we want to take from this topic. What's the difference between those two? Let's name them. First of all, a risk focuses on the future, an issue focuses on the present. A risk may be positive or negative. An issue generally is negative. We have a risk register. We have an issue log. We have risk responses. What's a workaround? Anybody heard of a workaround? They're applied under a very specific situation. Let's talk about them. First of all, that's the definition. Okay. A temporary fix that implies that a genuine solution to the problem is needed. You get a flat on your car on the freeway. You use a temporary tire that gets you to the tire store. Okay. Now, traditional issue management says this: when a previously unidentified risk occurs, you will apply a workaround or quick fix. Okay. How's that? That's a good rule of thumb. Okay. Yeah, and a workaround may apply to blockers, work stoppage. That may be a good one. But again, blockers occur what? They're issues, and we may or may not have predicted them. What are the sources of issues? Yes. All of these areas create issues. Even communications, yes. Remember the I'm not happy stakeholders that we talked about once upon a time? That's exactly right. These are all potential sources of issues. Anything on the project or anything outside the project. Okay, so or way that we manage risk, but the problem is the issue is going to occur and then we're going to document them. Okay, is everyone able to hear me, or are you able to hear me now? Yeah, I just got a network fluctuation. Yeah, you should be able to hear me now. So number one, documentation. Okay. Just like the change log, right? Quick, efficient resolution at the source. Okay. This is the appropriate manner in which we manage it, right? Good practice says we assign the management of that issue. And we're talking about delegation here, right? It's not a bad thing to do, especially when people are dealing with issues in areas where they are strong, right? Realistic due dates to the best you can. Mostly these will be assumptions. Issues show up at all meetings, okay? Remember our stand-up where we talk about progress, status, and forecast? And then we look at our top 3 or 5 issues and risks, right? Scrum. When we have stand-ups, this is an opportunity for us to actually, not confront each other, but confront the issues and raise them even when we don't want to. When people work together, they tend to be terribly optimistic, and it takes extra conscious effort to actually focus on things that we don't want to talk about, right? That's what we're talking about when we're saying confrontation. And once again, we're not confronting people, we're confronting the problems or the issues. Impediments are things that can slow you down. And these are the items that we want to trace. And these are the items that the project manager may first be aware of, and secondly, be able to influence, right? This is where our facilitation can help us. They may not stop the work, but they're slowing it down. And that's one of the items that we can highlight. I noticed that with highly optimistic teams. They respond really well to work stoppage, but when things just slow down, they don't think about it. They don't concern themselves with it, but it still is a problem. Now let's talk about change. How do we manage change? Well, there's going to be a process.